My YouTube channel is AKRC Learn Textile Chemistry. I am Professor Dr. Ashim Kumar Rai Chaudhary, ex-professor and HOD, Government College of Engineering and Textile Technology, Srirampur. The purpose of opening this YouTube channel is to share my knowledge with students, researchers and people working in textile and related field throughout the globe. This video contains the topic evolution of cloth and its dyeing and printing processes. This presentation is based on my book History of Textile and its Coloration. The book was published by Lambert Publishing on February 2nd, 2015. In this book, I have discussed the history of development of textile materials from ancient time and its beautification by coloration. For coloration, a number of natural color extracted from vegetables, animals and minerals were used in earlier days. From the beginning of 20th century, those natural colors were gradually substituted by synthetic dyes. The colors are applied by dyeing or printing methods. In dyeing, the colors are applied uniformly, and in printing, those are applied in selected areas. Evolution of cloth, dyeing and printing processes. At the very beginning of human civilization, man need covering of their bodies to protect from heat and cold, started with animal skin and vegetation, then learned to make cloth from naturally available textile fiber, subsequently beautified those by dyeing and printing. The colorants were natural, extracted from vegetables, animal, insects and minerals. Many centuries passed to learn complicated methods of dyeing and printing to make bright and colorful shades on textile materials. These include precious tyrant purple or cochineal scarlet colorant exclusively used for king and emperors, madder red for guards and soldiers, brazilwood and logwood for common men. The methods are close guarded and secret among specific countries and communities. Cloths are mass consumption products next to fruit products. High demands resulted in fierce battle among various countries. In early 20th century, artificial dyes produced in more and more number. Superior qualities of synthetic dyes and well-defined and well-circulated procedure made dyeing printing process more controlled and universal. Historical perspective. The black, white, yellow and reddish pigments made from ochre, an earthy pigment containing ferric oxide, typically with clay, varying from light yellow to brown or red, used by primitive men in cave painting to cover over 15,000 BC. With the development of fixed settlements and agriculture around 7,000 to 2000 BC, man began to produce and use textiles and also add color to them as well. Clothing and textiles are important in human history. They reflect the materials available to a civilization as well as the technologies human has mastered through ages. The human being may have begun wearing clothing as far as 1 lakh to 5 lakh years ago, that is 0.1 million to 0.5 million years ago. Anthropologists believe that the animal skins and vegetation were adapted into covering as protection from cold, heat and rain, especially as humans migrated to new climates. First two figures shows the New Stone Age cave painting in France. Figures 3rd and 4th are ancient African dress and Maasai, that is Kenyan women in traditional dress. Neolithic or Neo Stone Age. In Greek, Neos means new, lithos means stone. Furs and non-cured hides are most popular at that time as clothing, as they required least amount of processing and could be pinned rather than stitched. With the surplus production in agriculture, cultivators began trading their harvest of flax, cotton, wool, and goat hair for making textile. Nail binding is a Danish one, 6500 BC, or knotless knitting is predating both knitting and crochet. The oldest nail binding textile, dated approximately 3500 BC, was found in Nahal Hemar cave, Israel. Figure shows nail-bound socks from Egypt, 300 to 500 AD. The earliest known, that is about 6000 BC, woven textile used to wrap the dead, excavated at the Neolithic site at Katahoik in Anatolia. The inhabitants of the Indus Valley civilization used cotton for clothing as early as 5 to 4000 million 5th to 4th millennium BC. Ancient India. Herodotus about 490 to 420 BC said the Indians have a tree which brings forth a kind of wool after the manner of sheep, but finer and better than this. One of the many objects discovered in Mohenjo-daro was a silver vase contained a small piece of cotton fabric about 5000 years old. Many years later, a Portuguese global navigator observed when the muslin is laid on grass to bleach in the sun and dew forms on it, the material can no longer be seen. A figurine from the site of Mohenjo-daro and Level Priest King depicts the wearing of a shawl with floral pattern. So far, this is only sculpture from the Indus Valley to show clothing in such explicit details. Figure shows Mohenjo-daro Priester Conic by Mahmud Mengal in Word66.com. The second figure shows an ancient form of churidar worn during the Gupta period, about 300 AD. Reference National Museum, New Delhi. Ancient Egypt. Evidence exists for production of linen cloth in ancient Egypt in the Neolithic period, that is about 5500 BC. Cultivation of domesticated wild flax, other bast fibers including rush, reed, palm and papyrus were used alone or with linen to make rope and other textiles. Ancient Egyptians' spinning techniques included the drop spindle, hand-to-hand spinning, and rolling on the thigh. Yarn was also spliced. A horizontal ground loom was used prior to the New Kingdom, when a vertical two-beam loom was introduced, probably from Asia. Linen bandages were used in the burial customs of mummification, and art depicts Egyptian men wearing linen kilts and women in narrow dresses with various forms of skirts and jackets, often of sheer pleated fabrics. The second figure shows linen bandage used in the burial customs of mummification. Ancient China. The earliest evidence of silk production in China was found in Kia Shanxi province in China, where a cocoon of Bombyx mori, the obtained silkworm, was cut in half by a sharp knife, dated between 5000 and 3000 BC. Fragments of primitive looms are also seen in Wuhu, Zhejiang province, dated to about 4000 BC. Scraps of silks are found in Hangzhou, Zhejiang province, dated back to 2700 BC. Other fragments have been recovered from royal tombs in the Shang dynasty about 1600 to 1046 BC. Chinese clothing or hanfu consists of a narrow cuffed knee-led tunic tied with a sash and a narrow ankle-length skirt called sang worn with a bixi, a length of fabric that reached the knee. Clothing of the elite was made of silk in vivid primary colors. Ancient Thailand. Earliest evidence of spinning can be found at the archaeological site of the cave located in central Thailand. It was inhabited during the end of the first millennium BC to the late first millennium AD. Here, anthropology discovered 90 fragments of a spindle-whorl, that is, weighted object of spinning spindle, dated 3rd century BC to 3rd century AD. The shape of the finds indicate the connection with South China and India. Ancient South America. Woven textiles estimated 12,000 years old, excavated from the Guitarero cave in Peru, probably used for a variety of creations like baskets and wall coverings. Ancient Japan. Some cloth fragments made from hemp bark fibers, 5,500 years old, were discovered in the Miyagi prefecture. The patterns on the Juman pottery shows people wearing short upper garments, close-fitting trousers, funnel sleeves, and rope-like belts. Since bone needles were also found, it is assumed that they were dresses that were sewn together. Classical Greece. Fabric obtained in ancient Greece was woven on a warp-weighted loom. A vase about 5500 to 5030 BC depicts two women weaving at a upright loom. Iron Age Europe. Bodies and clothing have been found in the Iron Age period, that is 1200 BC to 500 AD, preserved by the anaerobic and acidic condition of wetlands in northwestern Europe. A Danish clothing was largely unshaped and held in place with leather belts and metal brooches or pins. Ancient publication on dyeing. Plictho's Art of Dyeing, written by Giannutura Rossetti, 1540. The director of the Arsenal in Venice teaches how to dye cloth, linen, cotton, and silk in durable as well as false or common color. The book contains two pictures. One of a cloth dryer describes the dyeing of scarlet on woolen cloth with cochineal, alum, and basilut. The other of a yarn dryer describing according to the great art, while general instruction for the scouring and dyeing of silk yarn as practiced by the great masters of Florence and other towns of Italy. Ancient publication on dyeing continued. No significant changes or innovation has been recorded in the dyeing field during the 17th and 18th century. Frontispiece from the French work Le Teinturier Parfait 1708 depicts a dye shop in wonderful details. To the left, fabric is being reeled over a large reel by a man, while another starts the dye vat to ensure even coloration. The reel posts are set upon outcropping built in the brick vat. A similar vat in the right front foreground shows the open door and the fire inside the furnace. It has a chimney as well as the dyer is starting the materials with a stick. An apprentice pounds dye materials in the foreground. His heavy pestle is suspended from the springy to take some of the weight and help in pounding. In the foreground, there have two large stirring rods, a rake, and an unusual sled-shaped object of unknown function. In the background, several bowls, kettles, and sieves are hung from the wall, including one long and narrow sieve. More men prepare dye stuff on the table in the rear of the shop. Dyes, mostly vegetable dyes, use that term. Dyes of the Renaissance may be divided into two categories. Number one, those are expensive, difficult to obtain, and require artisans and craftsmen to achieve satisfactory results. And second, those that are inexpensive, easy to obtain, and could be used at home or in the local village. However, it is surprising that all the bright and beautiful colors do not belong to just first category. An assortment of vibrant, lively was obtained from the local flora of England, France, Spain, Holland, and the surrounding countries. The fastness of these vegetable dyes, that is, how long the dyes stayed bright after wearing and washing, varied greatly according to each dyer's experience with modern substances used to fix the dye to the fabric, and the fastness of the dye yielding from the plant material. No general dyer's guide nor any formal methods of passing on information regarding the experience gained from the each dyer's trials and errors was available even in guild members until Plixo's Art of Dyeing by Gluvenventura Rossetti was published in 1548. Some important events in the history of dyes and dyeing. Period 2600 BC, earliest written record of the use of dyestuff in China. 327 BC, Alexander the Great mentioned beautiful printed cottons in India. 236 BC, an Egyptian papyrus mentioned diets as stinking of fish. 55 BC, Romans found painted people in Gaul dyeing themselves with a word in natural blue dye similar to indigo. 2nd and 3rd centuries, Roman graves found with madder and indigo dyed textile, replacing the old imperial purple, that is purpura. 700s, a Chinese manuscript mentioned dyeing with wax resist, that is batik. 1200s, Ruscella of Florence rediscovered the ancient art of making purple dye from lichens sent from Asia Minor, probably similar to orchils. 1290s, the only blue dye of the period, word, began to be used extensively in Germany. Three major dyes were word, madder, and wild. 1321, Brazilwood was first mentioned as a dye sourced from East India and India. Some other important events in the history of dyes and dyeing. Period early 15th century. Cennino Cennini of Padua, Italy, described the printing of cloth, block printing, in his treatise called Methods of Painting Cloths. 1519s, Pizarro and Cortez found brightly printed cotton fabric in Central and South America, showing that the Indians knew about block printing. Cochinelle from Mexico and Peru now being shipped back to Spain. 1631 to 33, East India Company began import of calico from Calicut, India to England. 18th century, English dye house to dye the Buckingham Palace guard coats with cochineal. This contract continued into the 20th century, still using cochineal. 1745, indigo began to be grown in England after the Revolution. 1856, William Henry Perkin discovered the first synthetic dyestuff mauve. 1858, Greece discovered diazotization and coupling on or in the fiber. 1872, basic dye methyl green developed by Louth and Bouvigny. 1873, first sulfur dye developed by Groscent and Bretonnier, France. 1884, the first direct dye Congo red developed by Botiger. 1956, ISI in England introduced Prussian first range of fiber reactive dyes. Textile printing. Textile printing is the process of applying color to selected portions of the fabric as per definite pattern or design. In printed fabric, the color should be physically or chemically bonded with the textile fiber so that the color can withstand washing and rubbing. The mechanism of textile printing is similar to dyeing, but in dyeing, the target is uniform penetration or spreading of a single color in all directions of the fabric, whereas in printing, one or more colors are applied in selected portion of the fabric in sharply defined patterns. More or less same colorants are used in dyeing and printing. However, dyeing is carried out by dipping textile material in large volume of dilute colorant solution, while in printing, low volume of concentrated and thickened colorant solutions are applied with the help of a printing machine or tool like wooden blocks, stencils, engraving plates, rollers or cell screen. Thickening agents prevent the color from spreading by capillary attraction between limits of the pattern or design. History of textile printing. The knowledge of textile printing was known in Europe via the Islamic world from about 12th century and widely used. Fairly large and ambitious designs were printed in Europe for decorative purposes such as wall hangings and lectern cloths. A lectern is a reading desk with a slanted top. It is derived from the Latin lectus, where this was less of a problem as they did not need washing. Superior cloth was also imported from Islamic countries, but this was much more expensive. The Incas of Peru, Chile, and the Aztecs of Mexico also practiced textile printing previous to Spanish invasion in 1519. But owing to the lack of records before that date, it is impossible to say whether they discovered the art by themselves or in some way learned in principle from the Asiatic. As early as 1630s, East India Company was bringing in printed and plain cotton for the English market from India. Competition between French and English textile manufacturers and designers was fueled by the international exhibition. 5 methods of textile printing. First, hand block printing was used widely in East Asia and probably originated in China. Second, engraved copper roller printing, invented by Thomas Bell of Scotland in 1783. Very hardy machine and was popular till late 70s. Third, flat or table screen printing, earliest Chinese Song Dynasty 960 to 1279 AD, still popular in cottage and small scale. Fourth, rotary screen printing, popular since 1970s. Fifth, digital textile printing, started in the late 1980s as a possible replacement for analog screen printing. All five machines are shown in these figures below. History of dyes. Until the middle of the 19th century, plants, animals, and minerals were the only sources for coloring agents in the form of water-soluble dyes or water-insoluble pigments. The natural dyes offer a fairly limited range of colors. Most natural dyes were derived from plants and to a much smaller extent from shellfish or insects. They are only present in small amount and their extraction was often inefficient, so they were usually expensive. Some plants may have more than one color depending upon which part of the plant one uses. The shade of the color a plant produces will vary according to time of the year the plant is picked, how it was grown, soil condition, etc. Many natural dyes have been extracted traditionally from roots, berries, flower, heads, barks, and leaves. Indigo is the only important natural blue dye. Turmeric is a substantive dye capable of directly dyeing silk, wool, and cotton in yellow shade. Some examples of plant dyes. The barberry plant roots can give yellow color on cotton after mordanting. Annatto seeds give yellow-orange color on cotton, wool, and silk. Pomegranate rinds give yellow color on wool, silk, and cotton. Myrobalan, it gives bright yellow shades on all textile materials. It also acts as natural mordant to fix different natural dyes on textile material. Marigold flower can give yellow, golden yellow, and orange colors. Many other plant dyes from the root, leaves, seed, etc. are used for dyeing in different countries, centuries, and social groups. Red dyes include madder, that is dyer's root, brazil root, sapanwood, beetroot, cranberry, safflower. The turkey red color, very popular at that time, was based on madder. This red was considered brilliant and exotic. The madder plant continues to be used until the mid 1800s. Green color from ripe buckthorn berries and ragweed. Blue colors from the word plant and indigo. Madder. In the United States, red coat was associated with British soldiers who fought against the colonists during the American Revolutionary War. During this period, roughly 1750 to 1835, standard days for a British infantry soldier consist of a wool coat that reached the upper thigh, dyed with madder to an alizarin crimson. The cloth dyed with madder has been found in Egyptian tombs. The shades of such cloth buried with the mummies range from dull red to brown. Turkey red dyeing remained a carefully guarded secret of Middle East dyers in Asia Minor and Greece, involving complicated and tedious pre-treatments of goods. These dyers did a roaring trade with Europe in 17th and 18th centuries. One of the old textbooks says that at least 10 operations are required to mordant goods before they can be dyed by the turkey red method. Madder, when used with an iron mordant, produces a purple color. With alum it produces red, and with alum and iron in certain proportions it produces chocolate or black. Saffron, Basel, Switzerland, was a noted center of trade for saffron. The expensive yellow obtained from certain species of crocus. Crocus or crocuses is a genus of flowering plant. Wood is another example of a natural dye obtained from a flowering plant called Ischatis tinctoria. Wood or dyer's broom. Until the Middle Ages, Europeans used wood to create a blue fabric dye. The wood was a shrub that grew abundantly in parts of Europe. The coloring was in the leaves, which were dried and ground. The process of extracting the dye from the plant was unbelievably long fermentation, complicated, labor-intensive, and smelly. Indigo, although wood makes a faster dye, it is not so bright or clear as indigo. This dye was supplanted by indigo, an ancient shrub well known to the Egyptians and Indians. Like wood, its color lay in its leaves and branches. The leaves of indigo plants were fermented, the sediments purified. India is believed to be oldest center of indigo dyeing in the world. It was a primary supplier of indigo to Europe as early as the Greco-Roman era. The association of India with indigo is reflected in the Greek word for the dye, indicon, that is Indian. In the late 15th century, the Portuguese explorer Vasco da Gama discovered a sea route to India. The manufacture of natural indigo lasted well into the early 19th. Sappan wood or Brazil wood. The European records of true red dyes during the Middle Ages, primarily from the heartwood of an Asian tree called sappan wood, Scylla sulphinia sappan. Sappan wood is native to India, Malaya and Sri Lanka and is cultivated throughout the Asian tropics. The dye was a beautiful red, the color of burning coals, and was called Brazil by the early Portuguese traders. Logwood. Meanwhile, the Spanish discovered another leguminous tree called logwood in Yucatan Peninsula, Mexico, with deep red heartwood, very similar to Brazilwood. Logwood is a small, spiny tree with a peculiar, deeply fluted or corrugated trunk that appears like a cluster of stems fused together. The actual dye from the logwood is hemotoxin. The presence of a considerable amount of tannin in the purplish red dye bath allows the logwood extract to react with the iron salt to give a permanent black color. Logwood dyes have been used extensively for cotton and woolen goods, leather, fur, silk and inks. Although the demand for logwood dyes fell off with the development of synthetic substitute during First World War. Natural dyes obtained from animals. Insects mostly provide red colors. The oldest animal origin dye, Tyrian purple, produced from the secretions of the sea mollusk Murex, is an exception. Cochineal was an important animal origin dye obtained from the insects of the species called Actilopius coccus, which is still being used to dye textile. The cochineal insect produces carminic acid which mixed with aluminum or calcium salt to make carmine dye. Carmines derived from the insect Carmes glycis provide crimson red dye. This dye has been known since ancient times to color animal fibers but was inferior to cochineal in fastness properties. Lac was also well known in ancient time for coloration of animal fibers. It is obtained from the hardened secretions, that is stick lac, of the insect Caria lacca found on the twigs of certain tree varieties in India and the Southeast Asia region. It is obtained as a byproduct during the processing of stick lac for obtaining shellac. Dyed purple, also known as royal purple, imperial purple or imperial dye, is a reddish purple natural dye which is a secretion produced by certain species of predatory sea snails in the family Muricidae, a type of rock snail by the name Murex. Egyptians were well aware of high value of dyed purple. The typical cells were crushed to extract the fluid, which only turns purple once it has been applied to the fiber and exposed to light and oxidation with the air. The purple became a much used status symbol of luxury. The robes of the Persian kings were decorated with purple. Estimates are that it took 8,500 shellfish to produce 1 gram of the dye. Hence the fact this dye was worth more than its weight in gold. However, it is really a near miracle that any of the first dye stuff in human history was such a fast on dye. Synthetic dyes. At the beginning of the 19th century, natural dyes dominated the world market, whilst synthetic dyes, except picric acid discovered in 1771, are almost unknown. The majority were of vegetable origin, that is from plants, lichen and trees, though a few were obtained from insects and mollusks. While looking for a cure for malaria in 1850s, English chemist William Henry Perkin discovered aniline dye, a byproduct created from distilling tar left from the coal that was cooked to produce gas for commercial purpose. Perkin had trembled across the world's first aniline dye in 1856, a color that became known as mauve or mauvine. William Perkin, the figure shows William Perkin, who discovered the first synthetic aniline dye, mauvine, and his laboratory at Cable Street, East London. Present status of textile dyes. Globally, thousands of dyes are being produced by various dye stuff manufacturers. The industry is never static. New products are continually being introduced and established ones are sometimes withdrawn. Situation become complicated with frequent changes of the names of the product. These difficulties are felt long back, and the need for a systematic classification and recording in a system called color index. The color index is a reference database jointly started by the Society of Dyers and Colorists and the American Association of Textile Chemists and Colorists in the year 1925 at UK. It is available both in the form of a book in hard copy and soft copy copy in the form of a CD and is also published on the web. Each die gets identified by a unique 5-digit number, which is called CI or color index number. Apart from the number, each die is given a generic name or CI name. The name is based on the base action. The dice made of behavior and the action. The CI name thus gives a specific way in which a dice can be identified. The CI name is used less as compared to the CI numbers. The CI names are useful in identifying a die. The table shows the color indices for a few yellow organic pigment. The CI generic name, for example, CI generic of 3 pigments are pigment yellow 17, pigment yellow 74 and pigment yellow 81. Corresponding CI number and CAS number, construction number, and the color of the pigment are given in the table. Around 27,000 individual products are listed under a total of 13,000 color index generic names. Classification of textile dyes according to use. There are 14 types of classes of dyes according to their methods of application. Direct dyes, acid dyes including metal complex, basics or cationic dye, modern dyes, azoic dyes, sulfur dyes, VAT dyes, solubilized VAT dyes, reactive dyes, dispersed dyes, pigment color, mineral color, oxidation color, and ingrain color. Suitability of the various dye classes. Cellulosic, cotton and viscose. Suitable dyes are direct, azoic, sulfur, VAT, solubilized VAT, reactive, ingrain, mineral, pigment, oxidation color, limited use. Next, cellulosic, jute and flax. Most of the above classes, except those require caustic alkali. Additionally, acid and basic dyes can also be used. Protein fiber, wool, silk, nylon, acid and selected direct dyes, basic dyes, limited use. Polyester, cellulose acetate and less commonly nylon, dispersed dyes. Acrylic and modacrylic, conventional and modified basic. Every story must have an end. History is the knowledge of and study of the past. It is the story of the past and a form of collective memory. History is the story of who we were, where we came from, and can potentially reveal where we are headed. History is voluminous. It is impossible to express the history of coloration throughout the past centuries in a few pages. I have tried my best to fetch a few important historical events of coloration which will be hopefully useful for understanding the development of coloration in the past. Thank you. I am Ashim Kumar Chaudhary.